I'm not gonna lie and act like this is my favorite technique to use, but if you need a bite, there's nothing better.
There's one. You should be good, right?
Yeah, just deeper.
First one. There's one more than I had last tournament.
Yo, it's your boy, back at it like a bass addict, back in the garage for part 2 of my top 5 spring bait series. If you didn't check out that last video, I talked about chatterbaits, gave a lot of good tips on those. So if you haven't tuned into that video, definitely go do that. But today we're going to talk about drop shots. Not as exciting for me as chatterbaits. Not something I'm like dying to tie on when I'm rigging up, but those times when the bite's tough, those fish are in a negative mood and they got a little bit of lockjaw going on, you can't really beat a drop shot. So kind of got to push my pride aside sometimes and just tie that thing up, because it saved my ass more than once in tournaments, out fun fishing. There's just days when the fish are just really tough, they don't want to bite much, and you can't really beat a drop shot in those scenarios. So definitely just got to have that stuff in the tackle box ready to go in case plan A, plan B, plan C don't work out and you got to hit the give up button. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump into it. Like I talked about in my last video, these fish, they're going to be pushing up shallow. The water's warming up, they're thinking about spawning, and so the majority of my time I'm focusing up shallow. I might start out a little deeper in some of those transition areas, but these fish they're looking to come shallow. They're looking to think about spawning, to feed, so everything's moving shallower compared to the winter time. So a lot of what I'm targeting this time of year is going to be kind of those high percentage pieces of cover, those best pieces of cover in that shallower water. So docks, isolated clumps of tules, grass patches, laydowns, rock piles, whatever you can find up shallow that looks good, like a bass might hold around it, pitch that drop shot up there and just let it sit. And it's really as simple as that. You can just kind of pick your targets, make those accurate casts, and just let that worm do the work. A lot of times if those fish are in those areas, just having that thing sitting down there in their face, not doing much, you don't have to shake it, you don't have to hop it, you just let it soak down there. A lot of times your line will just start swimming off. So that's kind of the areas that I'm fishing it. I'm using a shorter leader a lot of times because I'm pitching it around. I don't want that super long leader, it makes it kind of awkward. So I'm usually shortening up my leader and I'm just making those super accurate pinpoint casts at those high percentage areas. The baits that I like to use, really simple. I have 3 baits that I like to use just because it makes it simple for me. This is not something I'm like gonna have tied on all the time, or I will have it tied on, but I'm not gonna be throwing it all the time. So I'm not really experimenting too much with worms. I have what I'm confident in, and usually if I need them, those baits will catch me fish. So bait number 1 being the Strike King KVD Dreamshot. This is the Magnum Dreamshot, so a little bit bigger. Just got a little bit of a more meaty body to hold the hook, be able to rig it weedless. And that one's just a simple straight tail worm, kind of got a more bulbous tail, and you get a little bit of quiver with very minimal movement of your rod. So the bait kind of just does the work for you, and it gets bites. It also has that coffee scent, that striking coffee scent, so you get a little bit of extra attractant there. But yeah, not much more to say, it just gets bites. And then another bait that just gets bites, has been getting bites for so many years now, is the Roboworm. This is the 6-inch fat straight tail worm. I like that fat worm, just once again a little bit more body for that weedless rigging. And then that 6-inch worm, instead of that 4.5, I like the 6-inch just because it tends to get a little bit bigger bite. You're still going to get small fish on a drop shot, even if you're throwing a longer worm, but I think that 6-inch tends to get a bigger bite than the smaller one. And then that one just comes in all the great Roboworm colors, and it's just gets bit. And then lastly, kind of my super bailout, this is the smaller bait of the three, but the Netbait crush worm, 3.75 inch. Yeah, smaller presentation, real natural, just flowing action, not much going on, real skinny little tail, but those bass cannot resist that thing. It's got a lot of salt, it's real soft, and they'll just slurp it up. So if I can't get bit on the Dreamshot or the Roboworm, I'll put that thing on, and usually I can get a bite. I'll just have to downsize my hook a little bit, like a size 1, and that usually does the trick. Next thing is colors. Just like with my baits, I keep my colors real simple. I'm either throwing something purple, green, or pink. So something like a Margarita Mutilator, M.M.III, just that darker worm, that darker purple worm is great in stained water, tannic water. Sometimes you still get a little bit of that spring rain, some runoff, and so some of these bodies of water are a little bit dingy, and that dark purple worm stands out really well and gets a ton of bites. But even in clear water, that purple worm on some fisheries just is the deal. And then secondly, just a green is super natural, kind of a bluegill imitator. Those bluegill are also pushing up shallow this time of year, and so that's a real natural forage to imitate in the springtime. So anything green pumpkin, watermelon candy is great on a drop shot, gets a ton of bites. And then lastly, just a pink worm, something like a Morning Dawn, is just great, especially in clear water. It seems like those pink colors do really well. Sorry, there's a plane going overhead. Hopefully it's not too loud, but yeah, those pink worms, especially in that clear water, will do really well, get a lot of bites. So those are pretty much the 3 colors that I'm sticking with. That's what I'm confident in, and I feel like it doesn't need to be very complicated. Just have a few color options for different water clarity, and just go from there. Terminal tackle, which is really important for this technique. It's a little bit different of a setup than I would throw in the wintertime or in the summertime when I'm casting out offshore in more open water. With this presentation, I'm throwing a weedless drop shot, so a lot of times I'm throwing like an offset worm hook. This is the owner cutting point offset worm hook, anywhere from like a size 1 to a 3/0 for some of those bigger worms, but usually like a 1/0 or a 2/0 is a great starting place. That'll fit a lot of your standard size worms. And another good hook is the owner cover shot. It's another straight shank worm hook, but it's got a little bit of a keeper. So it'll hold those worms on there for that weedless rigging. Save you a couple baits, hold it on there. And then my weights, I like to use a little bit of a heavier weight this time of year, because a lot of times I'm flipping it, not even making those long casts. I'm just making those short little flips at those targets, and so that heavier weight kind of allows me to be more accurate in short quarters. So anywhere from like an 1/8 ounce to a 3/8 ounce, usually a 1/4 ounce is a good option. A 1/4 or a 3/8 is probably what I'm using the most. A 1/4 if I'm in some grass and I don't want that bait really just sinking down in there, getting bogged up, I'll throw that 1/4. And then that 3/8 if I'm around more clean bottom and I just want that bait to get directly to bottom and just have that worm soaking down there, I'll throw that 3/8. And oh, weight shape. So yeah, usually I'm throwing the cylinder drop shot weights, tungsten. These come through grass really well. They're just real skinny. And then the teardrop weights I'll use if I'm fishing around more kind of clean bottom. I don't have to worry about grass. I'll throw that teardrop shape, but it doesn't matter too much. Whatever drop shot weights you have, you could fish. You don't really need to go out and buy specific shaped weights, but that's just what I like. And then the leader, usually I'm using a shorter leader, so on a standard drop shot I usually am using somewhere around a foot, 10 inches to 14 inches leader, and you're kind of allowing that bait to flow suspended up off the bottom more. For this technique I want a shorter leader, so 6 inches or less. I don't want that super long leader. It makes it awkward for flipping, and also I just want my bait and my weight to be kind of close together at that target right where I pitched it, because you know, I'm thinking that's where the fish is and I want that bait just right there in its face. So that's kind of the thought process. Tying a Palomar as always with that drop shot rig. And yeah, that's it for the terminal tackle. The rod, reel, and line. I like a heavier line for this kind of drop shot setup. With a normal drop shot setup, I'd be from 6 to 10 pound test. For this setup, I'm usually from 12 to 16. I'm usually 14 or 16, just because I'm pitching into some heavy cover up shallow, and you can get some big bites. So that peace of mind having that heavier line. Always fluorocarbon, you get that invisibility and just not very much stretch, so you can get those fish away from that cover. So that's what I like in terms of line. I like Sunline or Seaguar, so Sunline FC Sniper or Seaguar and VizX are two great options for fluorocarbon. And then on my rod, I'll throw it on a spinning rod and I'll throw it on a bait casting rod. It just depends. If I'm throwing a little bit of a heavier hook, heavier weight, I might throw it on a bait caster. And if I'm throwing it on the lighter side, I'll throw it on the spinning rod. The spinning rod that I like, this is the Dobyns Kaden, and this is the 712 SF. So it's a 7-1, a little bit of a longer spinning rod, and it's a 2 power. So I think for Dobyns, what's a 2 power? Medium light. It's a medium light, but it's got a good amount of backbone for a medium light. I think the Kaden is a little bit stiffer, so yeah, when I'm fishing up shallow, I want a little bit of a stiffer drop shot rod, but obviously not super stiff because it is a finesse technique. But anywhere from a medium light to a medium, I wouldn't go up to a medium heavy on the spinning rod. Just a little bit too much beef, but medium light or medium is a great option. And then for my bait caster, I don't have it with me right now, but the Shimano Expride 7.2 medium heavy. So that's for that little bit bigger hook, heavier weight, probably a bigger worm as well, and just pitching that around some of that heavy cover. So yeah, I'll kind of alternate between the two. If I feel like I can get away with the bait caster, I'll usually throw the bait caster, but sometimes you gotta go down to that spinning rod and fight them with the drag. So yeah, like I said, it's not necessarily the funnest technique for me, but when I need it, it always comes through. So definitely something to have tied on in your back pocket, just waiting in case the bite gets tough and you need a bite. So yeah, make sure you look into some of these baits. It'll all be in the description. Check out some of those worms, some of those hooks and weights, and if you need a new drop shot setup, I'll link that stuff as well. But yeah, hopefully this will save you on a couple of outings when you need a bite, and it definitely has done that for me. So appreciate y'all watching video number 2. Video number 3 will be coming next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about yet, but probably won't be a finesse technique. Just knowing me, that's not really my deal, but I definitely will pick up a drop shot here and there. So as always, appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.